There's a little bit of breaking news that has broke over the last couple of hours. And when I say breaking news, it's not really news, it's just noise. And I just wanted to flag it up because I know that a lot of people that tune into our show are keen to know developments on all things Conor Benn. Now, tonight, Regis Prograis is fighting and defending his WBC world title. It's in New Orleans, and he's recently signed with Matchroom Sports and Eddie Hearn. And obviously, Eddie Hearn's out there in New Orleans, and he's given a couple of interviews to the guys and girls that are on the ground covering the game. And he's given an interview basically stating that we are on the verge. That's right, that's the words that I'm going to use. It's not signed, sealed and delivered, but we are on the verge of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. They're the reports coming off an interview that Eddie Hearn has just given in the last couple of hours. We're on the verge of that being agreed for September the 23rd in Abu Dhabi, UAE. It is claimed the fight could take place in the UK if Conor Benn makes progress with his UK anti-doping case. I'm sure you know that I've got plenty of thoughts on this. I'll give them you in a minute. But first, what's your take on us being on the verge of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn for September 23rd in Abu Dhabi?
Well, it's a much bigger fight now than it was last October the 8th. It's bigger because it's made world news over those two positive tests for clomiphene that Conor Benn returned in the build-up to that fight. Mm-hmm. It heralds the climax of the investigation and the hearing, which is like a court case, really. We need a resolution on that. They're obviously keeping their options open if there is a decision made on Conor Benn that he can fight in the UK, or the suspension is backdated, which I doubt very much because he only took it to UKAD in March, and I understand from mid-March is when they'll make their ruling. Hopefully for him, and I do hope for his sake, that they have looked at that, whatever that 270-page document held that he presented first to the World Boxing Council. I do think they'll just go ahead and have it in Abu Dhabi on September the 23rd if UKAD don't want to or can't come to a resolution straight away, or he doesn't get cleared, Benn, that is. But ultimately, it's a huge money-spending fight, and this is about getting Conor Benn back in the fight we all want to see him in. You know, it's the third fight between the families. Mm-hmm. Two great fights between their fathers, and you know this is boxing doing what boxing does, and people utilising loopholes and all those kind of things. I will be at the fight. I think talkSPORT will be at the fight.
It won't happen. It won't happen, and the reason why it won't happen is this, right?
You don't think the fight will happen?
It can't happen because Chris Eubank Jr. is a British Boxing Board of Control licence holder. Eddie Hearn is a British Boxing Board of Control licence holder as a promoter. And therefore, there are rules and regulations that they have agreed to and signed up to that they have to apply to the British Boxing Board of Control in order to take part in this fight, where there is a fighter in Conor Benn that is under a provisional suspension with UK anti-doping. And Robert Smith has been quite adamant. He's been quite open and honest on our station. And he said, listen, that fight is prohibited in the UK right now. It is. Conor Benn is prohibited to partake in fights on British soil right now. And anybody wanting to partake in a fight with him anywhere else in the world has to apply to us. And we are not going to grant that.
Yeah, but there's still a loophole around it. Chris Eubank Jr., if he fights Conor Benn, doesn't need to fight again. So he can still go. No, they cannot stop a boxer going ahead. I don't agree with it, by the way. Of course, I completely agree with you, and I agree with the board. They will not be allowed, if Eubank agrees to go ahead, as he did when he knew about Benn's positive test for clomiphene, I believe, in legal terms, they will claim restraint of trade and they'll still go ahead with the fight. The irony in all of this...
Doesn't make it right.
No, it's not right. It's not right.
None of this is right.
No, none of it's right. But this is, again, it's boxing stretching the rules, and blue in the face, having said this 150 times since last October, we need safety procedures in this inherently dangerous sport. And if someone tests positive for something, innocent or not, guilty or not, you need the proper procedure.
Is this a tactic by the promotional outfit putting this together in order to speed up the process with UK anti-doping?
Well, it might be, but they won't. They won't speed up the process of what? Strict liability. We've talked about this time and again. There is strict liability in the protocols of UK anti-doping where they need verification on how that stuff got in his system. Now, he's questioned the veracity of the testing system, the failings of the testing system. He's been given an out, in a way, Conor Benn, by what the World Boxing Council came up with, which could be a surfeit of eggs that he took.
But he denied that. He said that was not the reason.
But he's denied it himself. It's an absolute mess. It's a comedy. It's a farce in so many ways. But
why is boxing then pursuing to try and make a fight for a fighter that is currently under a UK anti-doping provisional suspension?
The big problem is for Eddie Hearn. He's the one who could suffer in this because Chris Eubank Jr. could get licensed by Abu Dhabi. I was about to say the irony, of course, is that the Boxing Board of Control have helped to set up these commissions in the Middle East as well and have had a real leading hand in it. What we need is a complete across-the-board agreement with all the commissions in the world that if someone is suspended pending a case, that they go along with that as well. It's what should happen, but I don't think it will. I don't know. You feel that Eddie Hearn is pushing UKAD's hand here to try and get an answer. Is that what you feel it is? That he's putting it out there rather than they really are going ahead with a fight. Now, Eubank Jr. and Liam Smith are not going ahead with their fight. That's been postponed twice, remember? Yes, down to injuries.
Yeah.
But what's happening there? That doesn't normally happen. And then it's disappeared. I think Eubank would rather fight Benn than he would Smith.
Yeah, because there's more money in that.
A lot more money.
I understand that, but listen, I've been very vocal on the Conor Benn situation, right? And this is nothing personal on Conor Benn.
No.
What he's done is we are told that he has failed 2 VADA tests for clomiphene. All right. Now, they've gone back and forth. They've done interviews here, there, and everywhere. They've been shouting their mouths off and saying this, that, and the other. The facts are he is provisionally suspended with UK anti-doping. I have no problem with this guy at any point in the future resuming his career. But first and foremost, let's have a conclusion to the UK anti-doping investigation. Once we have that, listen, there's some bright brains in there, no doubt about it, and they will go through the right processes, hopefully, and they will come to a conclusion, whether he deserves a ban, whether he doesn't deserve a ban, whether strict liability comes into this or whether strict liability doesn't come into this. But let's have a conclusion before we put him back in a ring. It's very simple in my eyes. What's happening here is pretty disgusting. That the promoter, who, let's be straight, this promoter, Eddie Hearn, I've got a lot of time for him. He's done some wonderful things for boxing. But his conduct during this whole process last year was absolutely abhorrent. He should have been dragged over the coals for the way that he behaved last year, trying to put this fight on when the British Boxing Board of Control told him that it was prohibited on the Wednesday morning. 24 hours, 36 hours later, he's still trying to put this fight on. Then comes to the conclusion that it's not going to go ahead last October. And now we're in a case where his fighter, Conor Benn, listen, I want the lad to have a career. I want him to continue on. He's made it. Whatever has happened. But let's have a conclusion to this investigation before we're saying September 23rd, we're fighting in Abu Dhabi regardless what. That's not on. It's not on at all. You can't just pick a fight up from here because it's prohibited here and stick it over here and think that it's acceptable. It's not acceptable at all.
I don't disagree with you in any way, shape or form from everything you've just said in that soapbox rant, which was perfect. I agree with every single word, but this is boxing. It's the Wild West at times. It's untamable. And they will stretch the imagination, they will stretch the rules as much as they can, because at the end of the day, it's not about making money, it's about making money.